Hello, everyone, and welcome to Helen Keller Services' third annual National Disability Employment Awareness Month webinar. I'm Joseph Malillo, and I'm the National Employment and Business Relations Specialist with Helen Keller National Center. I'm a middle-aged white male with salt and pepper hair, and I'm wearing a dark blue shirt. Here are some housekeeping issues. The interpreters will be spotlighted along with the speaker. The chat box will not be available, but the question and answer function will be enabled for the panel discussion, which could go until 4 o'clock. The session is recorded and CEUs are offered for the session. This year's theme is disability part of the equity equation. It's a great theme, but it begs the question, why and how? We trust that you'll walk away with some good answers and information. But here are some facts to start out. 1 in 4 individuals worldwide has a disability, and disability is cross-sectional with all areas of diversity. Many of the technologies that were invented for individuals with disabilities and by individuals with disabilities have become universal. Touch screens were invented by a man with a disability in his hand. The typewriter was created by a brother and his blind sister. A blind man invented cruise control, and hand cycles, which became bicycles, were invented by a paraplegic man. And I want to thank Milt Wright from Wright Associates and Jessica Lopez, who works with him, for some of those tidbits. So when accessibility and innovation includes individuals with disabilities, it benefits everyone. And just imagine how, where, and what they will contribute in the future. Now it's my honor to introduce Sue Rosinski, who has been with Helen Keller Services for more than 40 years, and just recently passed her 2-year anniversary mark as CEO. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Joe. I am a white female. I have shoulder length blonde hair. I'm wearing dark black rimmed glasses. I'm in my mid-60s. I have a black shirt and a black background. So hello, everyone, and it is quite an honor and a pleasure to welcome all of you to this exciting event today, our 3rd annual National Disability Employment Awareness Month webinar. The theme, as Joe has said, is disability, part of the equity equation. And today we have an impressive panel of experts with us today who will generously and earnestly work each and every day towards ensuring individuals with disabilities have an equal opportunity to engage in meaningful pursuits, in order to succeed and have a career where their talents and their abilities are appreciated so that they can reach their ambitions, their potential, and their aspirations. Through the efforts of the disability community and the efforts of many advocates, government officials, service providers, and employers, and including many of you in this audience today, we are witnessing a transformation in employment practices across the country. Companies far and wide are not only recognizing the business imperative of having a more diverse workforce, inclusive of people with disabilities, they are dispelling myths and they are turning on their head long-held assumptions. It's been an exciting time to witness companies putting into practice new hiring practices that are accessible and while strengthening the educational and training opportunities for their workforce to cultivate a culture where accessibility, inclusion, and diversity and equity are central core. But that said, there's still much work to be done. We've designed a webinar today with the thought with that thought in mind, and we trust that you'll identify one or more actions that you can take to move and build that momentum towards making disability part of the equity equation. The NDEAM spotlights the equity equation and how the sum value of any business grows exponentially, and it is strengthened by a diverse workforce with many perspective, talents, and abilities. What a great opportunity to celebrate the contributions of individuals with disabilities and a day to reflect and redefine the meaning of equity, to recommit ourselves to fostering a culture in our own workplace whereby diversity is valued and inclusive practices thoughtfully exist. I'd like to take a moment and thank the NDEAM team from Helen Keller Services for making this event such a meaningful one and supporting our collective vision for and among people who are blind, have low vision, are deafblind, and have other disabilities to live, work, and thrive in their community of choice. Thank you, Joseph Melillo, for your leadership, Rosanna Federa, Marilyn Trader, and Chad Medcalf as our co-chairs. Your collective contributions are central to the core of our mission. And now it's my special privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Kathy West Evans, who is the Director of Business Relations and the leader of the National Employment Team at CSAVR, the Council for State Administrators in Vocational Rehabilitation. The NET, and with their VR partners at the Veterans Administration and the American Indian Rehabilitation Program, represent the largest pool of candidates, of talent, with people who are disabled in this country. Kathy has been a trailblazer. She has dedicated over 40 years working in the field. And I love her enthusiasm, her courageous attitude, the ability to see things in new ways every day that lead to substantive change. She's a person that I have long admired for her fortitude and her professional deep smarts and creating partnerships with employers for some time. She continuously has fostered innovative programs and is a model for developing the dual customer approach, not only supporting the individual with a disability so that they can achieve competitive integrated employment, but also supporting the employer, the company, so that they can hire and retain talent to meet their business objectives. Helen Keller Services is very honored to have this partnership with Kathy West Evans. And Kathy, you have actually inspired us at Helen Keller Services to create our own business relations specialist years ago. Yours truly, Joseph Melillo. And this was done through a grant with the Lavelle Fund for the Blind. And you know, the impact there has been significant to us as an organization. We want to thank you for putting that fire into us. So without any further delay, I give you Kathy West Evans. Kathy, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sue. That was very gracious. And I'll talk about how life comes full circle. My name is Kathy West Evans, and I am a female, blonde hair, white female, blonde hair, shoulder length, purple glasses. And I have a dark background with the earth. We're in a new world, so it seemed appropriate to have that. Joseph has been a great partner, and Sue as well. Sue, as you said, I've been in the profession. I'm starting my 45th year, and we just haven't lost the passion, but life comes full circle. I join you from the Seattle area, where as a young person, I was born and raised here, as a young person experienced hearing loss myself, and was misdiagnosed. I was labeled early on in school as a behavior problem. Some may say I still am, but I'll take that as a badge of honor. What happened was, as a student, no one realized what was going on, but every time the teacher turned to the blackboard, and yes, I am that old, I had to ask the person next to me what she was saying. So my mom was the one that noticed that when she was talking to me, my lips were moving. And fortunately, our pediatrician's brother was an ENT. I did my undergraduate work in pediatric audiology because I knew how important it was to identify early on young children and babies with hearing loss, and how we can provide support to the parents and to the individuals, as Sue has said, to live that independent life and to start that early on. While in class one day, I met a woman named Mildred Johnson. Mildred was the person, she was a CODA, who started the Deaf Services Program here in the state of Washington in vocational rehabilitation. She was joined by a whole team of people who were deaf, people who were allies, supporters. And the one thing that she said that really changed my career trajectory was, let's stop trying to fix people, accept them where they're at, and help them be the best they can. That really resonated with me. And as I said, the career came full circle. I started my career at the Hearing, Speech, and Deafness Center in Seattle, where I managed a program, a Projects with Industry program, that served individuals who were deaf and hard of hearing. As we were moving through that program, we had a partnership with our Agency for the Blind and our Helen Keller Center, and we added people who were deaf-blind to the individuals that we served and started expanding that. So in this state, as I moved into VR as a VR counselor, I also continued to serve individuals who were deaf, hard of hearing, deaf-blind, and we partnered with our Agency for the Blind and still do. Because we know that we need the assistive technology specialists and we need the communication access for individuals who communicate through tactile signing. As I move through my career, I'll also let you know, my husband is deaf. I met him. He was heading the Greater Seattle Club of the Deaf meeting at the Hearing, Speech, and Deafness Center. And as we worked on projects together, friendship grew into more. And we just celebrated our 41st wedding anniversary. So this is a community I feel very near and dear to, and one that I have seen grown in so many exciting ways. And Joe talked about some of the technology, but I also want to ask you, how many of you know that texting was actually created for people who are deaf to be able to access cell phones? And now look how mainstream that is. As I moved through my career and starting in the Projects with Industry, that program focused on working with business, understanding that we could do a great job developing a plan, but if that plan's not connected to a career and we have the input from business that defines that career, and I know my coworker Inger Neal is on, we talk about begin with the end in mind. That's a Stephen Covey quote. If you're going to plan a career, understand what it looks like in the eyes of that business. How do we need to prepare people? How do we need to support them in their career goals? And as we begin to grow this and I move through my career, I started meeting other people across the country. We built a business relations program in Washington State and started to connect with people with Alabama and Florida, New Hampshire, North Dakota. The same message was there. Business was saying, how do we find you? I'm working with you in one state. How do we make this national? How can you build a team with and around us? So what we started to do was focus on that dual customer strategy. And we started to see that shift. I worked for the federal agency, and then what happened was the 78 VR directors that support what we're doing decided that we were going to bring a position in, the position that I'm in now, to create this vision, to create this team. So we brought together businesses, we brought together individuals with disabilities, and we said, what do we need to do different? And business said, build the relationship, build the trust. We often hear, we just don't know what we don't know, and we're afraid to ask. For all of us here, we know that's the number one barrier. As we were creating this journey, I went to a conference in New York City and I met Joe. And so thank you, HKNC, for realizing the importance of having someone on your team that really drives those business relationships, because we've been partnered ever since. So when you talk about the national partnership, HKNC has been with us. We learn from you. We appreciate your partnership and continue to grow with you. As we look at disability, part of the equity inclusion, Joe mentioned the data. The CDC did a study that indicated that 26% of the population of working age people here in the United States are individuals with disabilities. That's 6.1 million adults. Keep in mind, that survey happened before we went into a pandemic. We already know that there are people who were impacted by long COVID who have now joined our community. And the fact that anyone can acquire a disability, it's just part of the normal human condition. Acquire a disability at any time in life. This is a community that continues to grow. The other piece that I think is key here is that we've got 20.9 million families with one or more family members that are individuals with disabilities. So as we're working with business, we're looking at how we support and build the talent pipeline for candidates with disabilities, but how we also support family members. The workplace is changing. And as we look at DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've seen a real evolution, which I think is exciting. You're going to hear Joe and I say the time is now, and it is. Because what we saw early on was the focus on disability, equity, and inclusion. But then we started to see the expansion. And I think for the first time in my career, disability was part of that dialogue up front. We saw the president's executive order come out, DEI and A, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. But we've seen a shift now, thinking about the fact that that A needs to come before the I. We need to look at diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, because accessibility is not an afterthought. And as we start to see the evolution, including belonging, we're also looking at how we help companies shift their culture. So the focus on affinity groups, the focus on building the supports within a company and how we can be of support there. The other key piece is intersectionality. Disability is the one diversity category that crosses every diversity category. So we're learning a lot and supporting a lot of different communities. Sue referenced our partners in the indigenous communities, Native Americans and Alaskan Natives, and the culture and disability in that community, as well as inner city communities and a number of other communities. The workplace has also changed. I know this is no surprise. We're joining by video. And prior to the pandemic, I don't know that any of us really saw this coming, but I know how much we now depend on our technology team. So thank you for your support here. In the changing workplace, we're seeing more remote opportunities. We're seeing more work-based learning, whether it's on-the-job training, whether it's internships, and these can exist for college or high school students, but also we have a partner at United Health Group that's doing internships for people who bring a core skill set, but just need the work experience. And the latest round of those candidates that we've worked with across the country, 70% of them have converted in to full-time paid employment with excellent benefits. We're seeing trial work periods. We're seeing pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships. There's a real recognition of core skill sets where companies are looking for those core skill sets and helping people build certifications and degrees. So if you bring them, awesome, but the company will also help you build them. So our partners at Amazon, you can work at Amazon. We now have a young man who is deaf, who is completing work engineering in robotics, sponsored by Amazon. So again, that recognition of core skill sets. We're also seeing contracting and what people call the gig economy. So individuals who may work individually as a contractor, a small business, self-employment, or those who are working as part of a team, like a staffing agency or companies that support administrative roles in a company, whether it be payroll or HR or technology. We're seeing a real growth there. And as we learn that from business, how do we prepare our candidates for that type of a career? We're also seeing more young people. Companies are working with us to build the talent pipeline from a very young age. And I think we all agree, those of us who work in VR and with our community partners, we can't wait to talk about a career after someone's graduated. That dialogue has to happen early, and that support has to be there if an individual is born with a disability or it acquires it at a young age, supporting not just the individual, but the parents, the teachers, to have that vision for a career. So we don't have young people with disabilities who are a great talent pool graduating on to Social Security. We're also seeing a rising demand in areas like IT, construction, the trades, customer service roles, healthcare. So the question is, how do we respond? The time is now. How do we position ourselves to be that resource to both the individual customer and the business customer? We're going to go through an interpreter shift here. They need a break. Thank you so much. I'm sorry if I'm speaking too fast. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Angela. Hi, Debbie. So how do we position ourselves to be working effectively with business? When business tells us we just don't know what we don't know and we're afraid to ask, let's talk about the number one barrier. That's attitudinal. People just don't know. Business has said, help build the relationship, help build the trust. We want to ask those questions and we need support to get to the solutions. So what we've done at the national level is offer a number of services to business. We work as a team. So each of the 78 VR agencies has a member of the national employment team. And we offer a wide range of services, anywhere from looking at how you build that outreach and internships and accessing that young talent pool, to looking at recruitment, staff training, because companies want to open the dialogue around disability inside their company. So we work often with the employee resource groups or the affinity groups to continue supporting that internal dialogue in a company. Diversity programs, as I said, DEA and I and B. How are we working with companies to be part of that overall strategy with the company? I hope you're getting a theme here. It's not just HR. Retention. We've seen it in long COVID. We've seen it because disability happens at any time in that employment life cycle. How do we work together to keep people working? And when a company calls us and says, we need your help, how quickly can we respond? And a lot of times it means having our AT people or our OTs, our resources with us as we're looking at that work site. Workplace accommodations, assistive technology, looking at how, when we're working with a company that has a union, how do we build those aspects into contracts, into looking at the accessibility of, say it's a warehouse, and helping companies look at accessibility from day one. There's a lot we could do. And as I'm looking out at all of you now, and though I can't see you, I'm going to tell you, we're all part of this. We are all part of the solution when we look at what a business needs to be successful. But we need to come from that dual customer strategy. Understanding what a business needs, and you'll notice I'm not just saying employer, because we had Steve Szilagyi, the vice president of Lowe's, said, we're not just an employer, we're a business. Please know the difference. So that means working with that wide range within a company, HR, facilities, legal, diversity, compliance, the whole look at a company and bringing our resources to bear. So again, I want to go back and say thank you to our national partners, our VR agencies, our Veterans Readiness and Employment partners at the VA, the employment networks across the country, Helen Keller, National Center. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for your team across the country. We've been hosting webinars with business to really listen to what they need and really helping build solutions. Why is this important to business? There's a business case here. And I think we all need to understand that business recognizes the purchasing power of this community, which includes not just the individuals themselves, but family members and allies, all of us. And people do business where they see themselves reflected in that workforce. People with disabilities also have a disposable income after taxes of close to $500 billion. And family members will also spend their resources to purchase services and products in place that support their other family members. Business also recognizes that a diverse workforce, including individuals with disabilities, bring innovation to their company. HKNC and the NET and several of us have a long-term partnership with CVS, and I know you're going to see an incredible video of a story. But I want to read a quote to you from David Casey, who has left the CVS, but this is a quote that I've kept it close. People with disabilities tend to be some of the most creative, innovative, and quite frankly, most loyal employees. A person with a disability wakes up every day thinking about being innovative. That is a skill set. That ability to problem solve is innate. Our training programs quickly went from philanthropy to skill search. David Casey was the Vice President of Workforce Strategies and the Chief Diversity Officer at CVS before he shifted into his new role. And CVS continues to hire close to 500 people a year from our system, and these are people in a number of roles. Everywhere from working retail to pharmacy techs to upper administration, supervision, a number of roles within this company. So again, the focus on innovation, bringing that full circle. Really, the challenge we're talking about is looking at how we raise the employment rate and the representation of people with disabilities in our workplace, including people who acquire a disability later in life and remain working. That focus on universal design. The future, I think you will all agree with me, is a world where we have access full access to work, community, and living productive and independent lives. That's universal design. That's thinking with the end in mind. I want to share with you a story in closing of a situation where this became a life-changing moment. Again, a life-changing moment for me. About 20 years ago, I got a call from my mom. My brother was helping my uncle roof a building, and the truss he was on broke. He fell 35 feet. He was in the ICU in our local trauma center. At that point, they didn't know if he was going to live. He had sustained a C4 spinal cord injury, C7, a traumatic brain injury, and a number of other conditions from the fall. We kept on pushing. We kept on pushing as a family. One of the doctors told us, when he gets done here in the hospital, we're going to move him to a nursing home. And we said no. In fact, we said, hell no. Get us a new doctor. I want to tell you today, because of the work that many of you do here, whether you're in VR, whether you're in independent living, whether you're in advocacy roles, my brother is living independently. He has an accessible home. Because he was a veteran, he has medical supports from the veterans. He manages his own transportation. He has an accessible van. We won custody of his daughter. He has raised his daughter, who has graduated from college and has his own career. And he is back working. That's the power of the vision we all have together. I want to reinforce that the time is now. We are in this together. I am joined by my coworker Inger and Joseph and Sue and the whole HKNC team. I am excited to be working with you. And I think we have a bright future because we understand that we have a lot of support throughout our communities, families, and that again, with the DE, AI, and B recognition, the recognition that this is a community that any one of us can join and most likely will join at some point in our life. So let's make it universally accessible and let's keep people working and independent. I don't know if you want me to take questions now, Joe and Sue. I know we're moving to a panel. Do we want to take questions at the end or now?
Hi, this is Joe speaking. We will be going to a couple of recordings, and then we're going to be going through a question and answer later. And Chad Metcalf, who is the regional representative for much of the West Coast, will be introducing the first video. Hello, Chad.
Right. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. This is Chad Metcalf. I'm the Regional Service Coordinator for the Southwest region. A quick visual description. I've got a black background. I have a black shirt on, brown hair. I'm wearing blue framed glasses. I'm a white Caucasian male in my 40s. Kathy, thank you so much for your insight and some of your personal story. Wow. Thank you so much. I've had the pleasure myself to witness a fantastic partnership, a collaboration between 3 entities. First off, Hawaii Deafblind Employment Specialist, Leah Newman. Secondly, a very determined deafblind candidate. And thirdly, a manager at Workforce Initiatives for CVS, Trang Malone. I have to say, it's very much a tribute that I recognize their mutually beneficial opportunity and dedication for all 3 of these parties, which resulted in this candidate being employed in her dream job. So here's more of the story in an interview between Joseph Malillo and Trang Malone. Again, Trang was that CVS manager for Workforce Initiatives. So take it away, Joe.
Okay, so this was a great partnership and a great story. So we'll start with the video now. Hello again, everyone. We're talking now with Trang Malone, who is manager of Workforce Initiatives with CVS in Hawaii. CVS has been a very valuable partner with Helen Keller Services for more than 3 years. And many of the Helen Keller Services former participants are thriving with the organization in various roles. Aloha, Trang. Thanks for joining us.
Aloha, Joe. Thank you for having me today. So my name is Trang, and I am wearing a black CVS Health polo shirt. I am wearing long white dangly earrings. I have long black hair, and I am of Vietnamese descent. And I go by the acronyms she, her, and hers. Thanks, Joe.
Great. So CVS recently hired one of HKNC's former participants, and it was no small feat. Can you tell us the story?
Of course. So I believe you introduced me to one of your specialists initially in April of last year of 2021. So it has been a long journey for this client of yours. So at that time, we knew that the client was interested in being a beauty sales consultant, and she had already applied for a position on one of our Hawaiian islands. From there, she actually moved to a different island. So at that point in time, she also became interested in different roles. So she was interested in a healthcare career. So my discussion with Leah, we talked about, what could we do to really help her reach those long-term goals of maybe being a pharmacy technician, which was of interest to her. And so we had the opportunity to provide her a 120-hour externship. And we split that externship up between the front store as a store associate, beauty consultant, and as well as observation time in the pharmacy, really to ensure that, this was what the client wanted to do and, got some hands-on experience in all these different areas. So we were lucky enough also to have Leah, she was present the first week during the externship, really to answer any questions for our leaders as well as for the client. And then, after she completed a successful externship, and when she was ready to apply for a position, I met with her. We really discussed how she could reach her goal, and maybe what position would really be good for her to apply for, based on what was also available in the area that she was living. And so we discussed her resume. We went over her resume. I also conducted a job application and a virtual job tryout training with her. We covered some interview techniques and did a little mock interviews. And then she applied for the job and conducted the interview, and then was hired as a beauty sales consultant this last August.
That was her dream job when she originally started, right? She wanted a beauty sales consultant. She does a lot of makeup with friends and family and read all the beauty magazines. So she was thrilled. She went through a lot of different avenues and paths to get to where she was. And she was willing to take another position in the organization in order to, maybe move into a beauty sales consultant role. So what accommodations were necessary in the application process and in her working in the role?
Yeah, so during the application process, Joe, our application website is very accessible. So she used the closed captioning through the application with increased font sizes. I know other candidates as well, they have also requested maybe for a printout, because obviously computer screens can only go so large. And so we were able to also provide printouts to other candidates. And then with this client, when she was during her externship period, she was provided with one of our aprons to hold her iPhone, because she used her own app with live transcription on her phone to communicate with customers and with clients. She also used a vibrating alert bracelet, and it had a button on it from the Comprehensive Service Center. And so the button is also in the manager's office, so he or she can get in touch with her if there's a store announcement or anything else that is needed. She also just uses regular text. So with anybody in the store that may need to get in touch with her for something, just through her personal phone.
It's clear that CVS will go above and beyond the call of duty to have somebody employed in the organization and to provide the accommodations. And it's a mutually beneficial relationship because she's certainly contributing to the store and to the organization. How would another community service program reach out to the CVS Initiative team for a partnership?
Yes, thank you, Joe. So first I must say, it's not just CVS, it was really your client who had the tenacity and the will to really keep reaching out and wanting to work with us. So we greatly appreciated that. But for other organizations, they can definitely send us an email, let us know the city and state that you're located in, and you can send that email to winfo@cvshealth.com. Again, that's winfo@cvshealth.com. And then you'll be linked with your workforce initiatives manager in your area.
Fantastic. We will also share the email address after this webinar with folks, just in case they weren't able to write it down. So thank you, Trang. We greatly appreciate the partnership with you and, of course, with CVS overall. And we're looking forward to more successful employment outcomes, and we'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Joe.
Let's go ahead and do an interpreter switch, please.
The next video that we'll be providing you and showing you is of a successful journey, a difficult, persevering journey by one of our former participants. And Marilyn Trader, who is our Southeast Regional Representative with Helen Keller National Center and works with a ton of our candidates in the region, is going to share the story.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marilyn. I'm the Southeast Regional Representative for the Helen Keller National Center, and I am sitting wearing a black polo shirt in front of a black backdrop. I have dark, actually black long hair, but it's up in a bun with some silver streaks going through it. And I have black glasses with brown skin. So I am really excited to be sharing this wonderful video with you. It's very inspirational. Get a little emotional thinking about it because it was a journey that I've worked with this consumer for several years. She's actually participating in the audience today. So thank you for being here and watching this as well. It's been a journey for many years. We started together, met when she still had some residual sight and was utilizing visual interpreters at the time with some restricted visual fields. And now she is full tactile, hand under hand communication and utilizing other modifications for accessing her environment as well. And she is certainly inspirational for everybody because of her journey. And this is certainly a highlight to show because it shows the work of collaboration of providers, the Commission for the Blind, her VR counselor, Joe and I working with VR as well, and working with Miriam side by side in reaching her success. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and show her story.
Hello, Miriam. This is Marilyn, and I am so thankful that you have agreed to do this for us. All of us across Helen Keller Services have been trying to figure out, wow, who do we want to give our, talk about their success story? And your name came up many, many times. So, Miriam, for all the participants in this event, can you please tell us a little bit about your full name, where you live, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam Loznanu, and I am from Greenville, South Carolina.
So can you tell us a little bit about, your education background, and then kind of go into, when you decided to do some training in New York? That would be just great to hear.
Let's see. Where can I begin? It's been a long, tough, somewhat frustrating road. When I was 13 years old, I started thinking about the future. What do I want to do? Engineering, maybe IT, go into business. And then in my senior year, I took an engineering class. I did not like it. I then went to college at Clemson University, and I changed my major to computer science. After I graduated college, I went to New York to participate in training at HKNC. I was able to work a job in New York City. I had an experience in an office, in a high-rise office building, and rode the elevator all the way to the top floor. I worked in an office where I wrote code using a combination of my Braille display and JAWS.
I cannot believe you worked in New York City, and the fact that you went all the way to the top of this skyscraper and working in these office buildings. I go to New York all the time and I still get lost. So I commend you on that. So success on your training, obviously. So that is wonderful. As a result of that work experience and all the training that you obtained, what then happened when you completed your training period?
Well, that following month was March once I finished training, and it was the beginning of the pandemic. So I stayed home. And I did look for work, but I had a really hard time finding employment during COVID. So I used that time to build my skills. And of course, using my Braille display, I still continued my job search. Additionally, I looked at classes because there were certifications I didn't have, and I really wanted to expand my skill set. So while looking for jobs, I noticed that I didn't have the skills that were needed to fill those positions. So I took the time to enhance my skills.
Talk about self-motivated. You certainly accomplished that. And a lot of the certifications that you took are still, I have no idea how you did it, but a huge success there independently for sure. Now, through all that and with your team that you have with VR, the Commission for the Blind, your employment specialist, you have great communication access support. And of course, as you know, Joe and I working with you, I know we went through a lot in getting through some different job opportunities and applying to places all over the world. As a result, though, even through the pandemic, you were able to find a job. Can you tell us about that?
I think it took about 2.5 years to successfully land the job. I mean, remember, COVID lasted that long. So it definitely stalled the process. I also landed a 6-month fellowship as a software engineer, in which I simultaneously took a class to complete a certification. I got a position as a software developer at a company called Booz Allen Hamilton, which I abbreviate as BAH. The work that I do there is to read and write code using my Braille display coupled with JAWS.
Congratulations, Miriam, on your huge success. I know it definitely has been a journey, and I know everybody would love to hear more about it. And this company must be so excited to have you. I know they're well known for empowering their employees, and I know you will be extremely successful. Miriam, congratulations on your job. Congratulations on your journey, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the time to share my story. I am truly excited to be working successfully.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, Marilyn. Now we're going to do an interpreter switch and move on to our esteemed panel.
The next switch will be at 3:05. Yeah, they're okay.
So now I'm going to introduce the esteemed panel. I'm going to be brief in the introductions, but there is a lot more to their experience and outstanding contributions to the field. First off, Debra Ruh. Debra is the founder of Ruh Global Impact and also the founder and executive chair of Billion Strong. She's a global disability inclusion strategist, technologist, market influencer, and a global ambassador for 7 organizations, including the UN and the US State Department. She's published 3 books, Inclusion Branding, Tapping into Hidden Human Capital, and Finding Your Voice Using Social Media. Second panelist that we have is Andrea Flaim. Hello, Andrea. Andrea is the program manager at Amazon for the Blind and Low Vision program. She's an accommodations and accessibility specialist with Amazon, and she found her passion for helping her associates in many capacities and joined Amazon's disability and leave services team, where she helped to identify some of the very first accommodations for those who are blind and have low vision. She's helped the team and helped build the team of deaf, blind, and low vision support specialists within the organization, and is focused on making the workplace more accessible and inclusive for all, including the blind and low vision community. Thanks for joining us, Andrea.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Benro, come on the screen and say hello.
Hello.
Benro Ogunyipe has served for 6 years as president, vice president, and board chair of the National Black Deaf Advocates Incorporated. He's previously worked for the Illinois Department of Human Services as a senior accessibility specialist, reasonable accommodation specialist, and an investigator of the ADA Section 504 discrimination complaints for 17 years. In 2014, and again in 2016, US President Barack Obama appointed Benro to the National Disability Council. Fantastic backgrounds and experiences.
Thank you so much, Joe. Benro speaking. Benro signing. I'm honored to be part of the panel today.
So Benro, let's start with you. Maybe you can share with us how and where have organizations that you've worked with become truly inclusive of persons with disabilities?
Sure, good question, Joe. Thank you. First off, again, let me introduce myself. This is Benro signing. I'm a Black male. I'm wearing a blue polo shirt, dark blue, with a light blue collared shirt underneath. My background behind me is a light greenish background with a picture on the wall in black and white of Martin Luther King Jr. speaking on Washington, D.C. I'm in my office, so that's where I'm at right now. First, I'd like to say I'm honored to be part of today's panel. I'm very, very honored about National Disability Employment Awareness Month. It's a very, very integral recognition for people with disabilities that we have a whole month. And we're focusing on employment, and we're focusing on society. We need to honor what people have done in the past and what people continue to do. I'm also very proud of being here with our panelists, esteemed panelists. The previous organizations that I've worked with in the past, my first job, I should say, officially, I remember I had a lot of challenges and a lot of barriers, but there were also opportunities for employment. I know they weren't ready to really build accessibility in just yet. So we had to make sure that we had full inclusion in the workplace. So that was my first time learning about what inclusion meant, what ADA was. When I began working, ADA was about 10 years old at the time, which meant it was still a long way towards breaking down those huge barriers in the system that we see in general. And of course, things began to pick up, and ADA became more enforced system-wide, and we saw systemic changes in the workplace. It was a good opportunity for me because then I began to understand what ADA actually was and what it was based on, the different policies, and the fact that policies needed to be built on ADA to create a stronger foundation. Staff needed to be educated. And we also needed to ensure that we provided accessibility for people with disabilities in the workplace. That included deaf and hard of hearing, educating them what they deserved as part of ADA. A lot of deaf and hard of hearing people didn't understand ADA law. They didn't realize that the point was to provide accessibility for them. So that's where I first came in, where we were beginning to break down some of these barriers and reduce discrimination. It does still happen. Yes, discrimination and attitudes are still prevalent. But that's my answer for now. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Benro. Debra, your most recent podcast, of which there are many, was in unlocking the value of hidden human potential with Charlotte Dales of Inclusively. What can you share, one overarching takeaway related to the podcast and the NDEAM theme this year?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Joe for inviting me. I knew him, I've known him for years, and he's impressed me how he has fought for our community after organization. So I appreciate that, Joe. I also want to do a quick description. I'm a mature woman. That's right. I'm not saying old. I'm a mature woman with white and gray hair with purple streaks. And I am wearing a gold and sort of greenish top with eyeglasses, brown eyeglasses. I also really want to thank Sue and her amazing team for everything that you are doing for this community. It's, I think the leadership, 40 years is amazing. Thank you for that, that kind of leadership. And when I was doing my research, because Joe and I have been talking a lot about why are we not seeing people that are deafblind included in the workforce in a more meaningful way. Just doing my research, I was surprised at how bad the numbers are. According to some sources, there are 15 million people that are deafblind, but then there are other sources that I'm seeing that, and these were done in 2009, that are saying there's anywhere from 40,000 Americans that are deafblind, or maybe there's 100,000. So I'm just saying all of those numbers do not help our community when we don't know what the real numbers are. So I think that's a wonderful opportunity for us. I also want to say, Joe, before I answer the question, I also want to thank CVS and Stephen Wing. Stephen Wing was one of the first people that created that program, and he is now, him and his wife have both passed over, and then David Casey came in, but I really appreciate brands like CVS truly including us, including all of us in very meaningful ways that can be sustained over time. So I just wanted to say that. So bottom line, the way I look at these things, Joe, about your question is, I am very proud to be an American. I was born in Florida and I now live in Virginia. I'm very proud to be part of this community. I am a person with ADHD, neurodiversity, and if you know me, you know that's true. I have a daughter that is 35 years old. I have a wonderful son as well, but my daughter was born with Down syndrome. And sadly, I recently became a widow about 6 months ago. I'm going to do this, sorry. And my husband had a traumatic brain injury due to a car accident. So is my family broken, or it's my family just a bunch of human beings living their lives? So I work globally in these conversations though. And one thing that I'm seeing is there's a lot of groups that want to include us, Joe, but I'm not seeing people that are harder to include being included. I'm not seeing very much real emphasis being put on globally, and I'd like to see more in the States, where we're seeing more employment of people that are deafblind. Even that wonderful interview that Marilyn just did, and she did a great job with that interview. That young lady is inspirational. She's amazing, but more importantly, she's just an individual that wants to work. So I think it's a time to really rethink, what does it even mean to be human? So Joe, you're talking about my show, Human Potential at Work, which we have hundreds of episodes. But the reality is, what does it truly mean to be human? I think we all sort of need to take a whole bunch of steps back and look at why we decide some people in our societies are broken and others aren't. Why are some people, like, for example, me, I identify as a white person. I am white, but that doesn't mean I'm any better than anybody that has darker, color skin than me. So I just think the reason why I do the shows that I do, Joe, about how important our community is to normalize disability. Because if you're a human being, you might be part of our community and you will be at some point. You might move in and out, but at the same time, we also have to really look at all the intersections, because what about, okay, I already told the audience I'm a white woman. I'm a white older woman. Well, and I am a woman with disabilities, but I have to tell you I have disabilities, as do 80% of our community. But what if we were showing even more preferential treatment to women with disabilities, or Black women with disabilities, or Black women with disabilities as part of the LGBT community? Sorry, I'm getting going now, but we've got us, as we're breaking up our labels, our she, he, her, all of this stuff, let's also take the time to take these labels and put us all back together, because a person that is deaf and blind can add great value to the workforce, but we actually really have to show the employers how to do it if we're going to have true commitment. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Deborah. Andrea.
Hey,
Can you
Joe,
tell
this
us-
is Marilyn. Let's hold on 1 second so we
Okay,
can
for
put you a
interpreter
pause
switch.
for interpreter switches.
Absolutely.
Juan, can you go ahead and please spotlight Debbie? All right, perfect. Thank you.
So Andrea, can you tell us a little bit about the Blind and Low Vision Center, the development of the program, and where it's going from where it is now, the goals for the long term?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Andrea Flaim. First, I'll do a quick introduction. So I am the US Blind Low Vision Program Manager for Accommodations and Accessibility at Amazon. I am a female in my 30s. I have a light olive skin tone and am of Italian descent. I have wavy, dark brown hair, about medium length, brown eyes, thick black eyebrows, and I am wearing a plain black long sleeve crew neck shirt. So for Amazon, and I know Joe kind of mentioned it in the intro, but I was one of the first individuals to help identify accommodations for those who are blind or low vision that are working in an operations setting, so in our warehouses and fulfillment centers. And so it really started by, one or two individuals applying who were blind that wanted to work in the warehouses. And at Amazon, I mean, no feat is too big for us. So, at first there was some hesitancies in figuring out how could we do this in a safe and effective manner, but we were able to do just that. So from those few individuals, obviously we figured, we need to make more of an impact on this. We need to spread the word, and so we built an in-house. Blind and low vision accommodations team specific to handling these types of requests. So just for everyone's knowledge, how it works is our team will receive these requests when someone applies and they need accommodations. So we'll receive the request, we'll engage with the associate to understand everything that they're going to need, and then we schedule a call with the site leadership team, so the site that they applied to work at. So we'll educate them on how these accommodations would work. We identify job paths that they could possibly perform in, and then we'll guide that site and the leadership team through the process of setting up the tools and the resources. We also will provide ongoing training for them, so that way, every leader, whether they have turnover or if someone gets promoted or leaves, we always want to make sure that they are all aware of how best to support our employees with disabilities. I hope that answered the question, Joe.
Yes, it did. Thank you. Benro, can you tell us a little bit about your perspective on the intersectionality between, race, disability, and all the areas of diversity in your experiences, both in the field in general and in government?
Sure, Benro signing. I have to remember to keep saying that. But when we talk about intersectionality, it happens quite a bit. Yes, individuals have many different identities with which they choose to identify and demonstrate in the workplace. It depends upon their experience of oppression. For me, I'm a Black male, which means I potentially could be subject to experiencing discrimination, racism in the workplace. And in any situation that comes up, things could happen simply because of the color of my skin. As a deaf man as well, I've had almost double potential oppression that can happen to me because of societal norms and expectations. But as an individual, when I do experience discrimination, how do I know if it's because I'm a Black identified person or because I'm a deaf identified person? With both of those identities, I can't always tell. It could be one, the other, or both. And that's a lot to navigate. People will see me and judge me in the world as they see me. They'll see my Black skin first. My deafness is my invisible disability. And they won't notice it until they try to communicate with me, at which point then it becomes an obvious identity. So I tend to identify myself as Black and then deaf, since Black is the most predominant way society sees me. And then I'm able to divulge my identity as deaf. But there are individuals who are Black, for example, deaf. It could be a female, so then we add gender to the mix, a triple oppression. If they're deaf and blind, even more so. They could have other identities. If they're disabled plus and have other medical conditions or other needs. So every individual is different. When it comes to filing a complaint about discrimination, most people, when they fill out the complaint form, they only are able to put down one identity. If they're a Black female who happens to be deaf, it can be challenging to figure out, how do I feel discriminated against? Is it because of my female identity, my Black identity, my deaf identity? Which one is it? So intersectionality can be quite challenging for those of us with multiple identities. And we still have a long way to breaking down these barriers and building up the system. It took a long time for the system to be built up as a racist system and a discriminatory system that it is. But we really have to work hard at it because, I'm sorry, I misspelled that. Anyway, yeah, that's my answer. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Benro. Great insights. So Andrea, how can a vocational rehabilitation and community service provider encourage and provide assistance to businesses like an Amazon to include disability in their equity equation? And how do they get companies' attention in moving ahead with the process?
That's a good question. This is Andrea. So I would say, first and foremost, follow in, Helen Keller Services lead. Joe, you and your team have been so supportive of Amazon, and especially, as we started in this space and in this journey of working on how we can make the workplace more accessible, we're vulnerable. I mean, we are not perfect. We, even as a big company, we're all still learning. And I think it's really, really important for other companies to be vulnerable too, and to ask for help, and to build relationships with a lot of these community service providers. We have, across the country, every time that we have, an accommodation come through for someone who is blind or low vision, and, they're going to need support for, whether it's O&M or orientation mobility services, or job coaching, whatever it might be, we partner with them, and we ask for support. We work with their vocational rehabilitation, specialists, and we try to give the employee or the associate the best experience possible. So with that said too, I don't want to go over the associate or the employee and say we just work with vocational rehabilitation or we just work with community service providers. We always start with the associate. We always start with the employee. Their voice has the power to drive change, and I see it every single day at Amazon. There will be an associate that comes in and they tell us what their struggles are. And rather than us saying, oh, well, we'll go talk to a specialist or we'll go talk to a community service provider, we start with them first and say, what do you want? What do you need? And I think hopefully there are more companies out there that do just that, is listening to their employees and then building partnerships with the community service providers around them.
Thank you. Sounds like there's a strong emphasis both within the organization and with organizations outside that can refer individuals with disabilities for the partnerships, and realizing that it needs to be a mutually beneficial relationship. Debra, can you tell us a little bit about Billion Strong? Actually, before we do, we're going to need to do an interpreter switch. And by the way, everybody in the audience, you can start to put some of your questions in the question and answer box in Zoom. And again, we can go further and into 4 o'clock, if we have more questions moving forward. So let's do the interpreter switch.
And Joe, we are good. This is Marilyn speaking.
Oh,
we are
okay.
good until 3:30. Thank you so much.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So Debra, can you tell us a little bit about Billion Strong and how it adds and even improves the opportunities for inclusion of individuals with disabilities and the identity aspect?
Thank you, Joe. And I'll just say real quick, Debbie, Bob, the interpreter, told me to take a breath and slow it down, which you'd think I'd never done this before. So sorry, Bob. So I'm going to talk calmly this time. But I also want to say before I go to Billion Strong, Joe, that I really do want to commend Amazon and CVS as two of the brands that we talked about here, because Andrea and I were talking the other day, and they have, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think it's like 1.5 million employees around the world. So she's talking about what they're doing in Amazon in the United States for blind and low vision. They have people all over the world. So they're also doing quite a bit outside the United States, which is we all need to get involved in as well. So I do want to give a shout out to the amazing brands that are actually trying to include us. So thank you, Andrea. And I also had said to her, I believe that thank goodness we had Alexa during this pandemic, or Google Home, or I mean, it made my life much easier. So thank you. Thank you for that. So back to your question, the thing that you asked me, Joe, and I appreciate you bringing it up. One thing that I have done as a global disability inclusion strategist, working with gigantic corporate brands, one thing that I was very concerned about was we got, for example, the valuable 500. So we got 500 CEOs of national and multinational corporations that say, great idea. Let's include people with disabilities in our organizations. Okay, of course, we're going to pause here and say, what do you mean by that? But it's okay. We'll just assume we all agree on what that means. So 500 CEOs agreed to do this. And then you have efforts like with Disability In, with their equality index, and we see these brands being seen. So that's wonderful. But then I started to worry. I'm a bit of a worrier. And I started, and I will be honest with y'all, but I won't tell you the data. For example, the Valuable 500 reached out to 2 groups in the States that are recruiters for people with disabilities. Neither one of those systems were accessible. I think the first thing I have to say is if everything isn't accessible to all of us, we got a problem. And by the way, we got a problem. So they weren't accessible. One system had 3 resumes. The other system had 107. I'm curious if anybody on this call that is looking for people to hire knew about this, probably not. So what really freaked me out is, yay, we got 500 CEOs to agree to include us, but where are we? Where are we? And so that is why I created billion-strong.org, not to be Helen Keller, not to try to be to bring us all together with identity. That is the first global identity movement where we have tons of groups like Helen Keller that have joined us. I have 90 country partners. We have some of the biggest organizations of persons with disabilities in the world involved. We have every single group because, we're gigantic. We're mental health. We're chronic illness. We're chronic pain. We're, different types of disabilities. We're deaf, blind. We're a gigantic community. And then you start getting into what Benro was saying, into our intersections, and trying to figure that out. And then the employers are trying to figure that out too. I want the employers to run to Benro and go, wow, you're brilliant. Ooh, you're Black or African-American. If you're in the States, you're deaf. Wow. But I don't think we're doing enough to really highlight who we are and the value we add to these employers. But now is when we have to do it. So I would ask everybody, please go to www.billion-strong.org and just sign up. It's free. And yes, it is sort of a marketing campaign, but we're not going to try to do what everybody else is doing. What we're going to do, though, is tell what everybody's doing. What is Enable India doing? Do y'all know what Access Israel is doing? Do you know what's happening in Australia with the disability organization? What can the states learn from all of these activities? How do we come together with pride and show who we are so the Andreas of the world can find us? But remember, the Andreas of the world working for Amazon, they also represent our community. They are our community with lived experiences, their parents, their caregivers. So I think we have a really, really important opportunity to all come together with pride and follow what the LGBT community did. Yeah, come on. We're a great group. Don't be inspired by us. Please hire us. We will kick butt and we are so productive. But why don't we start with deaf blind? and build upon that. Think what we could do and learn from it as societies. What could we do with AI and the metaverse, the gaming, to make sure that every 15 million people that are deafblind, they get hired first, and then let's go take care of everybody else. Sorry. Okay, Joe, I'm stopping. Sorry, Bob, Debbie.
That's okay. Marilyn, do we have any questions or should we move on with what we have?
So this is Marilyn speaking. I do have one here that is from Michelle. I notice many of the webinars I attend do not take into consideration low or fixed income individuals with disabilities. How does inclusion and accessibility affect that further identity? Things such as transportation or the ability to obtain assistive technology.
Benro, can you help with that?
Benro signing. Sure. First off, I think that it's important to remember when we talk about intersectionality that there are different groups like the LGBTQ community, for example, and that is another identity and intersectionality. So we might have a deafblind person or a deaf and hard of hearing person who is also a member of the LGBTQ community. So I wanted to recognize that and kind of go off of what Debra was mentioning. Regarding this question, once COVID hit and the pandemic began, everything went virtual. Everyone was remote. We needed to innovate, and people did. Technology advanced amazingly. At the beginning, things were not accessible though for everybody. Some things were accessible here and there, but not the entire virtual world, not the system that we needed. So when it comes to disabled people and the disabled community, deaf and hard of hearing people, we're always considered as an afterthought. And because of that, we need to be louder. We need to get our voices and our opinions out there, that we need innovation. A few things happen, but typically we're a month, several months, if not years behind in technology until we finally do catch up, but then people have already moved on to something new. There's a lot of companies out there that started doing a lot of remote job interviews, hiring through remote means, work from home. And a lot of that time at the beginning, it wasn't accessible for people with disabilities, which meant that we missed out. Deaf and hard of hearing people were left by the wayside. Where are the job opportunities? If they wanted to apply for jobs, everything was online, interviews were online, but how were deaf people supposed to access without interpreters and captions? Slowly, things were building up and technology did catch up for us, but we can't be an afterthought anymore. So I agree with Debra, what you had said earlier, that there are a lot of companies out there that aren't doing what they should be doing, and they could do better. A lot of them talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. And that's unfortunate. They look at us sometimes as the token individual with a disability, and they say, look, see our poster child that we've hired, and it makes good marketing and economic sense, but we're not tokens. We cannot accept that. Tokenism doesn't work. Companies need to do more than just talk the talk. They need to put into practice everything they're preaching. So we need to have more people who are disabled be represented in higher level C-suite positions, whether that means board of trustees, board of representatives. We need to be invited to the table. We need to be the ones who help make that influence for policy change. A lot of businesses mention, we support inclusion and diversity. We're totally DEI and A, but are they doing a better job? Are they actually doing it? That's what we need to look at. Thanks, Joe.
And so this is Marilyn speaking. Deborah did add in the chat as well, plus the technology laws hurt our community. When they try to make them more secure, they often impact accessibility. My team had to fight California legislation when they attacked Alexa. So let's go ahead and go to this other question here, which is actually directed towards Andrea. Andrea, one of the participants is asking, what are some of the tools and resources that have been useful for colleagues to be successful in their day-to-day?
That is a great question. So there are so many. I'll break it down into two segments. So first is the operational setting. So our associates that are kind of the boots on the ground, they're doing a lot of the physical manual labor. They require a lot of different technologies like tactile tape, for example. I think sometimes people don't always realize that, but working in a warehouse and being fully blind or having severe low vision, you're walking into a really loud space, which can be overwhelming. You're walking into a space that doesn't have, it has 4 walls and it's over 1 million square feet. So having to navigate in that wide open space can be a lot. So we usually will start with tactile tape. Another thing that I'm so fortunate to have at Amazon is a team that we utilize frequently. They are the Amazon Fulfillment Technology team. They have been such an incredible resource and wealth of knowledge for us. They have actually committed to making a lot of the softwares and the computer systems that we use in the warehouses to package and deliver items to our customers with what they call a speech library. So it is a built-in it has like built-in screen reading technology. It's not perfect. There's still, a lot more roles and job paths that we're working to get that implemented in. But that is a huge game changer and will allow us to have more and more job opportunities available for our associates. We also partner with, lots of different companies and identify tools like IRA or ORCAM. And then in the corporate space, we always offer pretty much whatever the individual is requesting. If they need JAWS, if they need, say they have a Windows laptop and they say, I'm used to VoiceOver, I would really like a Mac. We'll try and figure that out for them, and we'll try and make that happen. We've been able to get Braille displays when they request it, or a Braille printers. So we really focus on the individual and what they need. So there's a lot of different tools and technology. It just kind of depends what the individual needs are. I hope that helps answer the question.
And this is Marilyn. Thank you so much, Andrea. And there was somebody who was asking about reaching out to Andrea. What you can do is reach out to Joe or any of your Helen Keller regional representatives and or deafblind employment specialists to get in contact with your local area Amazon, and we can certainly help you with that process. Thank you. Joe, floor is yours. And we'll have to do an interpreter switch as well. Can we just go ahead and do that? Thank you. Hold on one second. Andrea, okay, Angela's on the screen. Perfect. You're good, Joe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Benro, can you tell us a little bit about upcoming legislation and who in the government and federal government should we be looking towards to be a champion for inclusion of individuals with disabilities?
Benro signing. I know of several laws. I'm not sure if they've been implemented just yet, but they provide permissions for people with disability in workplace environments. I know that in the past, the US president has provided executive orders and signed those into law, requiring that federal agencies need to actively pursue and hire more individuals with disabilities within those federal agency workplaces. So for example, they need to meet a certain minimum quota for people with disabilities. And they should not be competitive, but that person should be a qualified person with the disability and be given the opportunity to interview. So I know that the ADA law is extremely important in supporting that. Also, I know there are some states out there who have specific laws that are tailored to providing excellent models to hiring and focusing on people with disabilities. Some are also laws that are anti-discrimination. In my state of Illinois, we have currently 4 new laws that are related specifically to raising the bar and hiring people, minorities particularly. It focuses on African American populations. There's a work plan for that and a law. Asian Americans, they've got a work plan and a law. Hispanic Americans, work plan and a law. And finally, Native American Indigenous peoples. They also have a work plan and a law. But again, that's here in Illinois. For each of them, they have their own advisory council. And that advisory council, it has regular meetings to bring up any ideas at the state level for agencies that meet those specific communities' needs. And each one focuses on their individual respective community. But again, I see that here, and they're not talking about disabilities particularly, just minority groups. We do also have a task force, and it's supposed to actively recommend to government how they can improve the workplace conditions for people with disabilities. So all of that really is just the start from the local grassroots community level. People talk to their legislators stating what they wanted in their own home communities. And it moved its way through the legislative process to become a bill that went to the floor of the Assembly in Illinois and got signed into law. So that's great, and it has improved the laws that are anti-discrimination for workplace situations. I think it's wonderful too that the federal government does have that executive order from the president. But when we talk about federal level, sometimes it only talks about those federal agencies. So employees of federal government. I encourage everybody here in the audience, talk to your local legislators. Because state law doesn't just happen by accident. People wonder, well, how do I get my state to enact such laws? It starts with the people, and those with disabilities have to speak up for what they need in their communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Benro. Debra is a big role question that you could go on forever with, I know, but what do you see as the future of accessibility in the workplace? And how can we, as individuals who work in a business or in the vocational services community, help bring about that change and accelerate the adoption of accessibility processes, practices, and technologies?
Thank you, Joe. And I will just say, once again, remembering to speak steadily, for Angela, who's doing a wonderful job. And, but I think I will just say, and I know I'm hesitating to answer this question. I look at the world very differently than most people. And I believe that the only way that we're really going to be able to do it is really sort of do it, really start rethinking everything. Because I think that there are so many employers that really, really meaningfully want to include people with disabilities in their workforce, and they want all of us to be able to, you know, buy their products and services. And one thing that I was seeing a few years ago before the pandemic hit, I started noticing it, was that we had some wonderful corporations that were hiring people with disabilities, but they sort of got stuck where they were. And they were hired in at a great place, and they just sort of got stuck, and they were never promoted. They were, you know, they weren't really trained to do stuff. And so I know I was one of the leaders that was complaining about that and pointing it out. And I saw the employers really start stepping up and trying to deal with that. But I think what we're going to have to do, Joe, is we're going to have to all, including Americans, we're going to have to understand that there's a big world outside the United States. And I think often we do not. And so when I was talking about, for example, billion strong, people were saying, oh, start in the States. And I said, nope, we're not going to just start in the States. Well, don't go in the States. You are so complicated. I'm very proud to be an American, but it's going to take all of us coming together and all of us saying, what do we do? Because one thing that I don't like that we've been doing is, for example, the wonderful, beautiful, amazing, talented, I'm going to blank on her name, but y'all know who I'm talking about, deaf and blind lawyer. Helen, amazing, talented woman, but she's like the only woman we talk about. So where are the 15 million people that are deaf and blind? And how do we really, as employers, how do we really, really include you? And how do we understand the accommodations you need? And or adaptions, which is called in the UK, but I think that we need to, and Benro was saying this a little bit, but I think our community needs to step up our game. We need to be careful not to be the best kept secret in the world, but we actually need to show exactly how we do this. How do we do it and that seems silly to say, but we're not doing that. We're saying to these big corporations, you need to hire us, Andrea. Andrea, give me your number because I want you to hire me right now, whether or not I'm qualified to do the job. But at the same time, we're trying to change society. So people that are deaf and blind are not broken. People like my husband with a traumatic brain injury that died with dementia. My husband wasn't broken, my husband was human. So I personally think, Joe, that we're not doing it right. We're not doing it right. We have all these amazing, talented job coaches and support coordinators on this call. And we can't give them Andrea's number. That's one person. Andrea, and I remember when CVS first came into the market in Virginia, they had 250 different people call them from all the same agencies. And they were so overwhelmed and terrified of saying the wrong thing to us or screwing up or don't you mess this up. So I think we all sort of need to step back and we need to say, how do you hire a person that's deaf and blind? I want you to show me all the accommodations you would use. I want you to show me the different types. I want you to show me how it works in different cultures. I don't think we're doing a good job of really telling employers how to truly include us. We keep saying we're inspiring, we're innovating, we're problem solvers, and we are. But at the same time, we need to simplify. How do I, as an employer, hire a person that's deaf and blind successfully? Just, saying a couple of things. So, all right, Joe, I'm going to go back on mute. I know I didn't really answer it, but I would say this is a global thing that's happening right now, all over the world. Corporations are fighting each other for good talent. They do want to hire us. They do appreciate people that are disabled and that we come from different backgrounds and we think differently and we're innovative and we're problem solvers. But we as a community are making it too darn hard for them to find us and to hire us. And we've got to do a better job of telling them how to do it. Make it as simple as we can do it. Let me tell you, Andrea, this is exactly, but I'm being serious here. We're not doing that, guys. We're going to continue to be left out. And then our intersections are going to continue to left out. We're talking about metaverses now. And I'm saying to the military, please, will you build that metaverse so that we can all participate? Oh, you mean 508? No, I don't want to talk to you about compliance. You yourself, sir, are about to fall off that bell-shaped curve because you're over 60. No, 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 no. Instead, we know how to build technology that works for people, even if they're deaf and blind. We know how to do it. We have to have the will, and then we have to do it. But I would say as our community, we need to pick up our game and make it a little bit more foolproof for the employers than we have done.
Thank you, Deborah. Let's
Joe?
take a quick interpreter switch break.
So Joe, this is Marilyn speaking. We're good on interpreters until the end.
Okay.
But I'm going to go ahead and read right here. And Michelle just wants to say, Deborah, you hit the nail on the head. It is the how. So there's kudos on that end. But in addition, we have a question here from Melissa Justice. And this might be a great opportunity, Joe, for you to go into our expansion field services as a support here. Here's the question. Is there a website that has a list of employers that are hiring in individual areas? I am a community employment specialist with Goodwill Industries of Southern Ohio. I have just started this position and I want to make sure I have all resources for my clients. Thank you, Melissa.
I can answer that question. I would reach out to Kathy West Evans and Inger for their direction. They have partnered with disabled, capital A, persons.com with a website that has over 1 million jobs from companies that are specifically looking to hire individuals with disabilities. Kathy, do you want to speak a little to that?
Yes, HKNC is a great partner, but we're partnering with the VR agencies, with the employment networks, the VA. We have close to over 31,000 candidates on that platform right now. And if you look at the website, capability.org, you'll see a mock-up of that, and please reach out to Inger or I or Joe. HKNC is on the website, so we can help you get connected. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another question, Marilyn? I think I saw something in the chat box.
This is Marilyn speaking. We just have pretty much Jana just saying great information and so true. We are all human. As someone mentioned earlier, how can we tackle the very real issue of transportation? So thank you again for that discussion. Melissa, yes, Melissa, we will go ahead and put that URL right here. So Kathy, if you could please type it in, that would be great. And so if someone would like to work for Amazon, Andrea, can you let them know how that process usually works?
Yes. So it always starts with the associate, or I should say the candidate at that point. So if you are looking to join Amazon, there's 2 different areas. There's corporate and leadership roles. So you would go to www.amazon.jobs, and there are probably at this point thousands of different jobs that are on there. So you'll have to search and look for making sure that you meet those basic qualifications and submit your application. And then if you're looking to work in the operational setting and work as a fulfillment worker, it would be www.amazondelivers.jobs. And from there, again, you would submit your application. They're really with the Amazon Delivers, there's no interviews actually. You submit your application for the site that you would want to work for that's nearby, and then usually, from my understanding, they'll reach out, the recruiting or the staffing team, via email, I believe, to coordinate a new hire event. So you can go, you can learn about Amazon. And then after that, if you say, yes, this is the right job for me, this is where I want to be, you would coordinate your new hire orientation. And from there, you would start your day 1 at Amazon. And during that process, if you know that you're going to need accommodations, whether it is during the candidate process or during, your process or your journey. Excuse me, your journey at Amazon, you can let the staffing team know, and then they would set up um, we call it a ticket, but they would basically submit a ticket of your request, and the candidate accommodations team would receive that, and they would start the process to make sure that you have accommodations ready at Amazon. I hope that was kind of long-winded, but I hope that answered it.
And so this is Marilyn speaking. Thank you, Andrea. Appreciate that. One last one we have here. It's right now 3:50. We have one question from Marcy asking, Andrea, how do you build and train your request review team?
That is a good question. I see the question here. So we are an entire accommodations team. We have many individuals that work on this team, but we have our specialized team that's about, I believe it's 9 individuals that are focused on blind and low vision. So when we have a new person that's coming into our team, one, they're already familiar with accommodations because they've worked in the accommodation space within our broader team, so they already understand the purpose of accommodations and how that works, but we specialize in blind and low vision, so we need to make sure that they understand what someone who's blind might need. So we go through different tools, different technologies. We share personal experiences of ways that in us as individuals have been able to accommodate some different associates at Amazon. And we also have trainings that we've created to make sure that we have everything documented. If there's anything that they missed the first time around, they can always go back to that training again. And we have a really close-knit team. We have like a chat where anytime anyone has a question, whether they're like, I, ran into a situation, I've never seen this before, what do I do? There's always going to be someone on this team that is there to support them. So we have really clear, open lines of communication as well.
So this is Joe speaking, and I just wanted to share in my conversations with Andrea. She's been very open to suggestions for accommodations and wanting to stay on the cutting edge. And we've been talking about our technology department, which is on the cutting edge, working with Andrea, meeting with her and her team to introduce her to some of the technology that will enable individuals with low vision, deaf, and a combination of the two to thrive in the workplace. And I would just suggest that when you establish a relationship with Amazon, that if you have some accommodations and technology that you can share and that you think can help Amazon bring on, accommodate, and help their individuals thrive, because it's also about retention, then I encourage you to share that with any organization. As Debra had referred to, they just don't know, and we can't take it for granted that they do. So, Benro, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, which was, you had varied experiences and came across some barriers, some hurdles, I guess, more specifically in your career, and what was your mindset, and how were you able to hurdle some of those barriers?
Benro signing. Sure. So when it comes to my journey and my experiences, In regards to barriers, they are varied and multiple. The barriers weren't just physical barriers. It wasn't just about being able to get an interpreter. Some of the barriers were attitudinal. They were biases. There were a lot of people who might have had opinions about what they thought I could or couldn't do as a deaf individual. They judged my skills, but it didn't matter. I worked hard. I went to school, I studied, I did my best, I got my degree, 2, 3, 4 different degrees, got my master's, and I showed. I was appointed by President Obama to serve on the federal board that he had established. But still, people had attitudinal barriers and discriminatory ideas about me and what I could or couldn't do. So a lot of the barriers that I found out about later, I didn't see immediately. But I focused more on getting the work done and doing what needed to be done. I didn't have any perfect solutions by any means. I just thought, do my best, figure out a way to overcome all of these barriers and obstacles put in my place. But as I said, they were multifarious. I also think that one big part of my journey all along has been overcoming such barriers to get me to this state executive directorship for the Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing here in Illinois. I was hired for this position specifically because the position required someone who was deaf or hard of hearing. It's stated in the actual job description. And when I look at other states and their agency, their Commission for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, I know what those job descriptions entail. And I think that sometimes they don't include the fact that it's a deaf or hard of hearing person, and that builds in systemic oppression. But we as deaf and hard of hearing people need to prove that we have the abilities and the skill sets to do the job. Lots and lots of barriers and obstacles will happen, and we just have to keep on working our way through them.
Thank you, Benro. Something I wanted to mention to everybody that you might not be aware of, Helen Keller National Center is truly national. We have 12 regional representatives throughout the country and 12 deafblind employment specialists that work in specific states. That team of deafblind employment specialists is growing, and establishing partnerships with vocational services, community service providers, and organizations and companies is critical to this long-term success of our candidates and ultimately people in the field and the growth of our field. So if you'd like to learn more about our services, our trainings, and how we can help you feel more comfortable working with individuals who are deafblind, please reach out to us. There's no doubt that you'll be hearing from us anyway, but we have some excellent programs and trainings that we're establishing right now. I wanted to thank Kathy West Evans just for being a champion overall and a major advocate for the hiring of individuals with disabilities for her whole career. Debra, Andrea, and Benro, you've been, an invaluable resource and given us some great insights into your work and how we should be moving ahead to achieve all of our missions, whether you're in a business or part of the VOC community. So thank you. Thank you for everyone who's attended, and we will be following up with some information for you in the not too distant future.